Ladies and gentlemen, I address you now not as a ghost, nor as an echo from a distant past, but as Winston Churchill, standing once more before a people upon whom the weight of destiny has, yet again, been laid. In the strange theatre of history, I find myself speaking in your time, not out of vanity, nor nostalgia, but out of necessity. For though the calendar has turned, and the machines have grown clever, the heart of man, his trials, his fears, his duty remains unaltered. It was in May of 1940, upon being summoned to serve as Prime Minister of His Majesty's government, that I stood before the House of Commons and declared, with no pretense, no adornment, and no sugar-coated illusions, the simple truth of our predicament. I told them I had nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat, not because I lacked imagination, nor because I fancied theatrics, but because that, at that hour, was the price of survival. It was the currency of freedom. Permit me to say to you viewers of this bewildering, yet astonishing age of endless screens and electric chatter that truth is still the most formidable weapon in the arsenal of any free people. And so I speak to you now with the same candor with which I addressed that storm-swept chamber in Westminster, not to amuse, not to soothe, but to remind. When I accepted the premiership, Britain stood alone. France, though not yet defeated, would soon be battered. The Low Countries were overrun. Our soldiers, our children, our homes were all under threat from a monstrous tyranny that knew neither mercy nor honor. And yet, amidst the blackness, I told Parliament that we would go on to the end. I did not tell them it would be easy. I did not promise them comfort. I told them we would fight on the seas, in the air, on the beaches, in the fields, in the street sand, that we would never surrender. And why, you may ask, did those words matter? Because they were true. Because they came not from a place of political calculation, but from an understanding, a grim, solemn understanding that liberty is not preserved by wishful thinking. It is not defended by slogans or hashtags. It is secured, and only ever has been, by courage, unity, endurance, and yes, by sacrifice. It is most curious, is it not, that in an age where you carry the world's knowledge in your pockets, where you command vast resources of science and communication, the same old spectres still prowl the earth. Tyranny, wrapped now in new flags, hatred, given new language, cowardice, dressed in fine suits and broadcast to millions. The enemy has changed its mask, but not its motive. You live in a world of comfort unimaginable to my generation. And yet, I wonder, have you become too comfortable, too allergic to discomfort, too quick to avoid the cold slap of reality? In 1940, we could not afford such luxury. Every man, woman and child in Britain understood that victory would not be granted by divine favor, nor by clever talk, but by grit. We did not wait for hope. We forged it in sweat and fire. Reflect for a moment, if you will. Reflect on what you would do if your homes, your cities, your rights, your very breath of freedom were under siege. Would you rally, as the British people did? Would you dig in not merely with shovels, but with spirit? Would you say, as we said, "Come then, let them come, we shall not be moved"? It is easy now, from the comfort of hindsight, to glorify the past. I caution you against that. Do not romanticize war. It is a vile and hideous thing. It crushes youth, it ruins cities, it scars the soul. I do not speak to glorify conflict. I speak to remind you that in the face of overwhelming evil, appeasement is not peace, it is surrender. And surrender is not survival, it is servitude. We, in Britain, had nothing left to bargain with but our will. And so we gave it. Not in half measures, not with caveats and conditions. We gave it all. We stood firm, and eventually, we prevailed. It is my belief that every generation must, at some hour, rise to meet its own ordeal, and yours, though different in shape and shade, will come. Perhaps it is already here. It will not announce itself with tanks or dive bombers. No, it will arrive more subtly through erosion of truth, through decay of conviction, through the gnawing disease of cynicism. You are told now that nothing matters, that the great causes are over, that honor is a joke, that loyalty is weakness, that courage is theatrical. You are told that to stand for anything is to invite ridicule. I say to you, reject this poison. It is no different than the defeatism we faced in our darkest hours. It is merely treachery in fashionable dress. And so, I say again what I said to the House. I offer you no easy road. I offer you no comfort without cost. but I offer you something greater: purpose, duty, dignity, the right to say, I did not shrink from the storm. I did not barter my soul for convenience. If these words stir anything within you, if you believe that truth still matters, that honor is not an outdated relic, that freedom must be defended, not merely with speeches but with spine, then subscribe, as they say in your curious modern parlance, to this cause. Lend your voice, engage, argue, think, for it is not enough to admire courage in others. One must cultivate it in oneself. Very well, let us proceed. In that fateful month of May, when the tides of war were gathering like thunderclouds over every European shore, I did not stand before the British people as a prophet, nor as a savior. I stood simply as a man who had waited too long to be called damned, who, once summoned, would not flinch. The words I uttered, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat, were not merely rhetorical ornaments. They were a contract, a declaration of what the path ahead would truly demand, not from soldiers alone, but from dockworkers, mothers, students, old men in tweed jackets, boys who had never held a rifle, girls who had never known silence without sirens. The whole nation was enlisted not by force, but by conscience. Now let me ask you directly, you who live in this intricate web of lights and screens, what are you willing to give? What would you endure for liberty? You enjoy the fruits of a civilization paid for in sacrifice, and yet I fear that many have forgotten the roots from which these fruits have sprung. They were watered not with convenience, but with the blood of the brave. They were tended not by cynics, but by men and women of unshakable resolve. Do not imagine, for even a moment, that freedom is a natural state. It is not. It is a rarity, a miracle, a blaze of light in an otherwise dark and brutal history. It survives only by the will of those who are prepared to fight for it, again and again, in each generation. When I first took the reins of government, I found the cupboards bare, the plans unfinished, the morale wavering. The enemy was not at the gates, he was already beyond them. In those first hours, we had no illusions. The British Expeditionary Force was in retreat. France would fall within weeks. We faced, in all likelihood, the invasion of our island, the bombing of our cities, the collapse of everything we knew. And yet, by God, we did not panic, we did not break, we did not tremble. We stood. How strange then to observe this agility, which so many retreat not before bombs, but before opinions, where the very idea of being offended is treated as an affliction worse than injustice, where disagreement is no longer challenge, but heresy. You are told to be safe not from danger, but from discomfort, and in so doing, you sacrifice the very steel that made men free. Permit me to tell you, this is not how liberty is preserved. This is how it dies, not with the roar of guns, but with a whimper, drowned beneath an ocean of trivialities. The British people, in their finest hour, were not shielded from fear. They looked it in the eye. They slept in bomb shelters. They watched their cities burn. They sent their sons to sea, knowing they might never return. They tightened their belts. They worked by candlelight. They sang in defiance. And they endured, not because they were taught to worship comfort, but because they understood that some things are greater than comfort. Honor, the pride of standing unbent in the face of horror. You too must decide what you will stand for. Will you speak when others fall silent? Will you act when the crowd demands stillness? Will you dare to believe in something greater than yourself? These questions may not come to you with the urgency of sirens or the rumble of panzer divisions, but they will come, quietly, perhaps, in the workplace, in your home, in your conscience. And when they do, remember this: history is not made by those who shrink from such moments. It is made by those who stand up and say calmly, clearly, immovably, this far and no farther. When I gave that first speech in the Commons, I was not applauded. The silence was heavy. The fear was real. But there was also resolve. For, even in the absence of cheer, the spirit of Britain stirred. Not because I promised victory, but because I promised truth. I ask you now, if you find value in these reflections, the fire of old still burns within your chest, then take a moment to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tell others what you believe in. Speak not with vanity, but with purpose, for your words may awaken another, and another, and another. That is how movements begin, not with parades, but with quiet conviction. The truth is this: every era must answer the same timeless challenge. Will you rise above your fears, or be ruled by them? Will you live in liberty or in the comfortable chains of compliance? I believe you have greatness in you, if only you will summon it. You must understand, I did not come to leadership in a time of triumph. I came to it amidst failure, doubt, and the looming shadow of catastrophe. I was not greeted with cheers, but with suspicion. My own party distrusted me. The opposition loathed me. The press called me a relic of another age, obstinate, belligerent, an old bulldog who could not adapt to the realities of a new world. And yet history does not demand that a man be loved. It demands that he be right, and that he be ready. The hour had come when Britain could no longer equivocate. No more letters to Berlin. No more polite diplomacy. No more pretending that reason could tame a regime built on madness. We had to confront the beast directly. And to do so, we needed clarity. No vague promises. No hollow reassurances. Only the truth, hard as granite, cold as steel. So I told the people, we are in the preliminary stage of one of the greatest battles in history. I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Some thought it too severe. Some whispered that the people could not bear such starkness. But I had faith in them, and they proved worthy of that faith. Because, you see, people will accept hardship if they are treated as adults, if they are told the truth, if they are trusted with the burden of responsibility. I tell you this, not merely to recount the past, but to signal a warning to your present. You are being flattered endlessly. You are being sedated with entertainments, distracted with noise, bathed in ceaseless novelty. But ask yourselves, are you being prepared for hardship? Are you being fortified for adversity? Or are you being softened? There are wolves in the world still. My friends, do not mistake the absence of war for the presence of peace. Do not confuse noise with vigilance. Do not allow the quietude of privilege to lull you into passivity. Great societies do not crumble all at once. They are hollowed out, quietly, over time, by forgetfulness, by indulgence, by the slow decay of virtue. A people who no longer remember what they stood for will fall to anything. Now let me return for a moment to that grim spring of 1940. It was not simply the machinery of war that we lacked, it was confidence. The enemy had momentum. They had devoured Poland, Norway, Denmark, Holland, and Belgium. France, the proud and mighty, was faltering. The British Empire, though vast, was stretched, tired, uncertain. Yet, amidst that gathering gloom, we declared we shall fight. Not because we were certain of victory, but because surrender was unthinkable. We did not fight because we loved war. We fought because we loved freedom more than we feared the cost. That, my friends, is what must be recovered in this time. Not the flags or parades, not nostalgia, but the iron beneath the velvet, the fire beneath the politeness, the readiness to pay a price, if the cause be just. Freedom is not inherited like a birthmark. It must be earned by each generation, by vigilance, by honesty, by sacrifice. And when the moment comes, you must not wait for another to speak. You must stand and speak yourself. Let me also say this, and I say it with the solemnity of one who has watched the skies burn. There is no shame in fear. We were all afraid, but fear is not a master unless you bow to it. Courage, you see, is not the absence of fear. It is the resolution that something else matters more. In those days, our young men climbed into hurricanes and Spitfires, knowing they had perhaps hours to live. They climbed into them anyway. Our sailors set out into black seas, knowing the U-boats were hunting. They sailed anyway. Mothers kissed their sons goodbye, not knowing if they would ever return. They wept, but they did not yield. What excuse then do we offer today? That things are complicated, that we might offend, that someone might disapprove. True courage does not ask for permission. It does not wait for consensus. It acts when the cause demands, and do not imagine that courage is only found in war. No, it is found in the quietest places, in the whistleblower who defies a corrupt system, in the parent who teaches a child to think freely, in the citizen who stands alone before a mob and says, I will not lie. If this is your time and I believe it is, then seize it. Do not wait for a leader. Be one. Do not wait for the world to change. Change it, not by force, not by rage, but by the steady, relentless exertion of will, sharpened by truth, anchored in duty. My voice, though distant, has been carried to you by some miracle of your age. Let that voice be not a sermon, but a mirror. Do you see in yourself the same spirit, the same indomitable resolve? If so, then rise, begin, and should you feel alone in this conviction, I invite you once more to leave your mark in the comments, for even across generations, across oceans of time, unity can be forged. Let this be not merely a video, but a call, a cry that echoes the old but summons the new. Asterisk then, let us bring this dialogue to its proper close with neither haste nor indulgence, but with the dignity such matters demand. It is a curious fate to speak to a world beyond one's own time, to reach across the abyss of years and address those whose faces I shall never see, whose struggles I shall never walk beside. Yet in this, I find a certain symmetry, for the words I spoke in 1940 were not only for my time, either. They were uttered in the hope that Britain and indeed, free men and women everywhere, might endure. You live now in the inheritance of that hope. The battles are no longer fought with Messerschmitts and tanks, but with truths and lies, with courage and cowardice, with action and apathy. Do not be lulled into the fatal belief that liberty is secure simply because it is familiar. There is always a tyrant waiting in the wings. Sometimes he comes in jackboots, other times in polished shoes and pleasant phrases, but always he seeks the same thing: your silence, your obedience, your soul, and always the remedy is the same resolve. If my voice has stirred in you some remembrance, or perhaps some awakening, then I urge you do not let it flicker and die. Let it kindle something lasting. Speak of what matters. Stand for what is right, even if you stand alone. Especially then. As I once told the House of Commons, you ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word: it is victory. Victory, not merely in battle, but in spirit. Victory over despair, over fear, over surrender to the petty and the small. Victory for the dignity of the human soul. The world is in your hands now, not the hands of governments or corporations or committees, but yours. What will you make of it? What chapter will your generation write? Make it one worthy of remembrance. Make it one that, when your grandchildren look back and ask, where were you when the hour demanded courage? You may answer, I was there, I stood, I did not yield. Now, if this message has reached you, if it has rung true in some deep recess of your spirit, then I bid you raise your voice. Speak to your peers. Subscribe, as you say now, not to me but to the cause of liberty, of duty, of truth. Share this, not for my legacy, but for your own. Let my final words be not of despair, but of enduring hope. For I believe in you. I believe in the great heart of free men and women. And I believe, still, even now, in victory. So take courage, dear friends. Stand firm, and never, ever surrender. God bless you.